Alright, so this is going to be my video about The Conjuring, which, in my opinion, is one of the best horror movies ever. It's really scary, and they just did a really good job with that movie, I think. I think his name was James Wan, the director. And he also did The Conjuring 2, which I've seen, which is another great one, really scary movie. They're supposed to both be based on true stories, and apparently The Conjuring 1 is pretty accurate to what really happened. That one I've looked into. I haven't looked into part 2. I haven't seen all the movies in the Conjuring universe, but um, I only watched the ones directed by James Wan. Although maybe I should watch the rest of them because I find it all really interesting. But so apparently, the real story behind that house is it's built on a ground where the King Philip's War was fought. Now, the King Philip's War was a war between the Pilgrims and the Native Americans of New England. And this was apparently one generation after the first Thanksgiving. There was no more peace between the Indians and the Pilgrims. I guess the Indians got tired of just the amount of whites that were showing up, and they felt like their land was being encroached on, and they decided to go to war. What ended up happening was there was like an informant on the Indian side who was giving the whites information. The Indians found out about it and they killed him. When the whites found out about that, they executed three Indian warriors, and then the Indians retaliated by just wiping out this whole settlement, and that started the war. And apparently, the Conjuring house was right around this area, and a ton of people. This was a very bloody, nasty war, and there was a lot of people died. Like 10% of the entire population of the whole area died, which is massive. That's a nasty war, and so I'm sure there's some malevolent energy around that area. Now, supposedly, some of the ghosts that haunt the place are seven soldiers from the King Philip's War, and then there's Bathsheba Thayer, I think her name was. She owned the house at one point, and they say she was a witch. I don't know if that's true. She could have been a normal woman, but apparently three of her kids died at a very young age, and I'm not sure if they accused her of it or what. But you also got to realize this is in like the 1600s, and kids died young. In a rough climate like New England, Northeast United States. That's a harsh climate in the winter. Especially up in that part. That's even further north than New York. I mean, New York is technically part of New England, but this all took place around Connecticut, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, a little further north than New York. So very, very harsh climate. So I don't know if Bathsheba was actually a witch or if she's just taking the brunt of the blame for the whole thing. I'm not sure. But there's a lot of information saying that she was just a normal woman, married with kids. Her kids died young, and I don't know. I don't know her whole history, so it's possible that she's responsible for it. But if you ask me, it seems to me from the true story that I've read, there seems to be some sort of demonic entity around there that's really doing the nasty stuff. Now, when the parents moved into that house, apparently the ghosts were kind of friendly at first. There was like a friendly woman ghost who used to like tuck the kids in at night and shit, and I guess they were kind of freaked out, but they didn't really have an issue with it because the ghost was friendly. But as time went on, more malevolent, evil type ghosts started showing up and messing with them, moving things around, making noise at night, talking to them, telling them to get out, telling them that I'm going to make you leave through pain and suffering, telling them there's dead soldiers in the walls, telling them all kinds of just disturbing things. And then apparently a really evil male spirit showed up and started messing with the daughters in a real nasty way, apparently. and and then Bathsheba's ghost apparently showed up, and she really didn't like the mother of the family because she felt that this is my house and I don't want some other woman in it, thinking she owns it. So what she was doing, she was messing with mainly the mother, and like trying to pinching her and poking her and attacking her, and then as things progressed, started possessing her and stuff, and then they ended up getting hold of Ed and Lorraine Warren, who are actual paranormal investigators from back in the day. And this whole Conjuring universe is brilliant for revolving it around Ed and Lorraine Warren because they were involved in some pretty famous cases. They made the whole Amityville on Long Island, the Amityville horror. They made that pretty famous. Um, and so they brought in Ed and Lorraine Warren to help because the whole family was freaked out. And you also got to realize they couldn't just move. People are like, why didn't they just move? Because this was at a time when this was the end of the Nixon era and the beginning of the Carter era, which means the economy was not good. They bought the house, and it pretty much ever since they bought it, the value steadily dropped every day until it got to the point where they were like, we're stuck with it. We can't sell it for, a quarter of what we paid for it. So they were just stuck with the house. And then, so they couldn't just move out. And then who's gonna? Oh yeah, come stay with us. You bring your 5 kids and your wife. You know what I mean? I mean that's a tough situation. There's not many people who got the room to bring in 7 people to live with them. So, they were stuck there. They couldn't just leave. They couldn't afford it. So they brought in Ed and Lorraine Warren, who I believe Ed is actually. I don't know if he can do exorcisms. I'm not sure. I think you actually need to be a Catholic priest to do exorcisms. But so they brought Ed and Lorraine Warren in, and Lorraine Warren apparently said she felt a very malevolent, evil presence as soon as she went into that house, and so they decided to have a seance in the basement and try to communicate with Bathsheba. And while they were doing this seance, apparently Bathsheba possessed the woman of the house, and the woman levitated in the air, flew across the room, and was really injured by this. And one of the daughters apparently snuck down there to watch, and she said the things she saw were so disturbing that she was never able to see her mother the same again because apparently the mother was speaking in tongues and in a voice that wasn't hers and levitating and doing all kinds of crazy shit. And so now just because the entity was saying it was Bathsheba does not mean it was necessarily her ghost. You can't trust a demon, you know what I mean? And so apparently the movie's pretty accurate to what really happened. Now, what I learned from this movie is really nothing in particular, but I can tell you what I know about ghosts. Now, I come from old school Irish and Italian Catholic people, and we're all very superstitious. I come from old school superstitious people. Um, we would do things to ward off evil spirits from the house and shit. Everyone did where I grew up. I come from old school New York, you know what I mean? So, um, one thing that my grandmother used to do, she had this little statue of an elephant, and this is a thing that people do. You point its ass towards the door to ward off evil spirits. An elephant or whatever animal, some sort of big animal that I don't know. But that's the thing. You face its ass towards the entrance, and it should ward off evil spirits. Another thing we used to do is on Palm Sunday, you put the palm above the door, and it's supposed to ward off evil spirits. Now, here's the thing, and they even get into this in the movie. So, um, when you remember when they're talking about the doll Annabelle. Now, I've never seen the Annabelle movie. I'm not sure if it's worth seeing. But when they're talking about the doll, the way the demon tricks the people into letting it into their lives is it asks their permission to possess the doll. It tells them it's a little girl and that it's lonely and it wants to be around them, and it asks them for permission to possess the doll. It doesn't give a shit about possessing the doll. What it wants is their permission to interact with them. And so this is how things actually work. Things operate on a level that they don't teach us. There's forces at work that are beyond our comprehension. But here's how it works. Now, you were gifted free will by the Creator Himself. So nothing can happen to you without your permission, without your consent. So If you're ever having interactions from some sort of entity that you don't want interactions with, you have to make it clear that it is you you're not giving permission, you're not giving consent. And so at that point, it's breaking a universal law, and there's a price to pay for that. So um, this is why a lot of old school people, Catholics and stuff, they do these things to ward off evil. They're basically revoking guest right. They're revoking their consent for this thing to enter the house. So now there's the ancient laws of hospitality. It's tied into this. So there's guest right. So if you invite someone in your home, you have to, according to the laws of the ancient laws of hospitality, they're your guests. You have to treat them well. You cannot harm them. You cannot abuse them. You're supposed to feed them. You're supposed to shelter them. This is the ancient laws of hospitality. Now, um, the reason people do these things to ward off evil spirits is they are revoking guest right from the evil spirits. Now, what I do is I carve the samurai sword out of wood. I unsheath it when I go to sleep, and I leave it near my bed. I'm presenting a weapon. I am revoking guest right from anyone who enters my house at night. I have anyone who enters my house at night, I have the right to defend myself against them and to make them leave by any means necessary. So, back in the days, if you entered a lord's hall or whatever and he had his sword on his lap out of its sheath, he's saying he's revoking guest right. He's not giving you permission or consent to be in his house, really. He's going to hear you out, but he's reserving his right to attack you, basically. He's to defend himself against you. He's not welcoming you as a guest. He's revoking that right from you. That's what Naked Steel says. So, sometimes they show like a picture of a king with a sword on his lap. Basically, he's revoking guest right from whoever's he's interacting with. He's not giving you the laws of hospitality. He's letting you in his house, but not as a guest, you know? And he has no obligation to feed you or shelter you or to be polite to you. That's what that means. So when I go to sleep at night, I take my sword out of its sheath and I put it on my bed. And basically, I'm revoking guest right from anyone who enters my house, and that includes spirits or entities or anything else. I'm reserving my right to defend myself and my area. Um, and so, I come from old school people. This is this is the shit we believe in. So it may sound crazy to people nowadays, but it doesn't really matter to me. In my opinion, modern people are the craziest people that ever existed. Anyways, so yeah, that's uh, that's why I find the Conjuring universe interesting. From what I've seen of it, they stick to how they stick to the ancient traditions with the permission and all that. I think the two movies I've seen are really good and really accurate, and they stay true to all the folklore and all that, which I enjoy. That's I like that's why that what I didn't like about the Blair Witch Project, where oh, you're just in this endless time loop where you're just fucked. No, that's not how things work. There's always a way out. That God's not going to leave you cornered to die. There's always a way out. There's a way to counter everything. For every strength, there's a weakness. For every weakness, there's a strength. There is order and balance in the universe. So any powerful entity has its weaknesses too. It's just as weak as it is powerful. That goes with everyone and everything in creation. There's balance. So I realized at a young age that I shouldn't be afraid of ghosts. I used to be real afraid of ghosts. I'd be laying there in my bed, scared of ghosts sometimes. But I came to the conclusion that I've never heard of a ghost actually killing someone. So I was thinking to myself, there's really nothing to be afraid of because what can it do besides mess with you? And then the other thing I was thinking, if it did manage to kill me, all it's doing is bringing me onto an even ground where I can actually fight it. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're turning me into a spirit, and my spirit, I believe, and I've believed this since I was a kid, is a very powerful one. So even as a kid, I was thinking to myself, if it did manage to kill me, all it's doing is releasing my ghost, which is probably going to be just as powerful or more powerful, and then it's on. You know what I mean? So, um, and I come from old school Catholics. Like, I believe when someone in my family dies, we put money in the casket. We give them. Everyone puts $1 in the casket. We give them. If they smoke cigarettes, we give them cigarettes. We send them off with gifts, and that's because we you know the tradition is you might have to pay a toll to cross the river to cross to the other side. You got to pay the boatman. This is why the ancient Greeks and all them used to put coins on the eyes of the dead. They're giving them coins to pay the toll to cross to the other side. So we do that too. We put $1 in the casket. Um, Everybody gets $1 to put in it. Flowers. I'm not sure if flowers, if that's why, if they're to be meant as currency on the other side, but we give them dollars and flowers. People put flowers on the casket and all that, but we put the money in the casket. Um, and we're sending them off with some possessions, with some wealth, so they can pay the boatman and do whatever else they got to do over there. But it's just a tradition. I think it's a Catholic tradition. I think. I mean, it's what my family does. It's what my people do. The people I come from. So, um, all these traditions are based on ancient things, and I like it. I like having a connection to the ancient world personally. I'm glad I come from old school Irish Italian Catholics who trace their traditions back thousands of years. You know what I mean? We're lost, but we're not as lost as most modern people, in my opinion. And so that's why I unsheath my sword when I'm going to sleep, because I'm revoking guest right from anyone who comes in without my permission. I'm I'm given myself the right to defend myself. I'm not giving you consent or permission. And if you want to break God's laws, go ahead. God is with me, and God is not with you. And that's going to make me more powerful in the fight. That's how I feel. So, call me crazy, call me whatever, but these are the things I believe. And whether it's true or not doesn't even make a difference to me. I like having a connection to the ancient world, and I'm interested in these types of things. And actually, I talk a lot about this stuff on Patreon. And so, what I believe demonic possession is, if you want me to explain it in a realistic manner, you've heard of people channeling spirits, right? I believe demonic possession is people are unintentionally channeling a demon. And sometimes it's a very powerful demon. And they are not strong enough to deal with it. I believe that all they really have to do is revoke the permission they're giving this thing to possess them. You know what I mean? But I don't know. But you'd have to talk to a Catholic priest about that. But I believe that that's what demon possession is. People are channeling a demon, inadvertently. Um, and I do believe they must have been tricked into giving their consent, whether consciously or unconsciously. So, um, this is why I'm always consciously warding off evil. You do not have my permission. You do not have my consent. You know what I mean? So it's a conscious thing on my part. And when I was a kid, I never messed with Ouija boards much, maybe just a little here and there. But my aunts and everyone else in my family were always like, "Don't you ever touch none of that shit." And so it kind of stuck with me. So nowadays, no, I won't mess with none of that shit. I'm not trying to contact anyone on the other side. I'll see him when I get there. You know what I mean? So my advice is don't play with none of that shit, unless you know what you're doing. Even channeling positively polarized entities. You know what I mean? You gotta know what you're doing. Otherwise, go on my Patreon if you're interested in these things. So you know, and I guess that's it for this video. I'm not sure. I filmed another version of this. I might want to use that one, but I guess another thing I should mention is they were saying Bathsheba sacrificed her child and then killed herself, which is maybe that would make you powerful on the negatively polarized end. Sacrifice is a real thing. It's a negative polarized, killing and sacrificing life is a negatively polarized action. Now, there's also a positively polarized way of sacrificing, and that is just giving things back to nature, leaving food out for the animals, pouring some of your drink down back into the earth, stuff like that. I guess that's all I got to say about that subject. The next video I'm going to do on this channel is going to be that movie The Witch, which is a really good, scary movie, which is it should be more famous in my opinion. It's a great movie and there's a lot to learn from it and I'm looking forward to doing it. So I'm gonna edit this video as soon as possible and get it up as soon as possible because I want to do The Witch. But I appreciate every single one of you. You got any questions or comments, throw them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. Everybody have a good one. I'll see you on the next one.